and welcome to today's event in the series Poli-Talks, Get Informed Before Elections. This series is co-hosted by Kerem House and Israeli Politics Simplified. Kerem House is a community-focused organization based in Tel Aviv. Since the beginning of COVID, they have focused on organizing outdoor and virtual events aimed to empower and engage Olim and young professionals in the city. Israeli Politics Simplified is a Facebook page dedicated to bringing Anglos in Israel unbiased, easy to understand information about Israeli politics and the upcoming election. I'm Meira Lerner, creator of the Israeli Politics Simplified page, and I will be your host for this and upcoming events in this series. It's very easy to get confused and overwhelmed by the information overload that we see from the campaigns leading up to elections. We know that you, the voters, care about the issues and want to gain a better understanding of the political and election system and what the parties plan to do to meet your needs in the next government. This election is a truly important one, and our goal is to help you feel prepared and knowledgeable when you step into the voting booth next month. Our upcoming events will be with candidates from different parties, and in the discussion will be held in a panel format. We have carefully crafted and selected questions for our candidates that really hit on some of the issues that affect most of us on a day-to-day basis. Most of our focus will be on those issues in particular. I'll be asking these questions, and my guests will be asking follow-ups to ensure that we get a full answer and perspective. Joining me again today is David Weiss. David lives in Karnei Shomron and is a content contributor on Israeli Politics Simplified. With us today is Simcha Rothman, lawyer and co-founder of the Movement for Governability and Democracy, publisher of the book, The Party of the Bagats, and is number 4 on the list for the Religious Zionist Party. With that, it is my privilege to welcome Simcha Rothman. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I would really want to. I think the issues. The main idea of Atzionut Hadatit Party is to really be focusing about issues. So I'm eager already to go and get into the details. But you introduced me, and I think it's. I think I owe one little explanation.
Of course, please take some time to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah. So actually, in the past 8 years, I was deeply involved in the issues of the legal system in Israel, in the low resolution, meaning from the top down. But I think that and a major issue when we talk about the religious Zionist and the right wing. It's a little bit strange how it became a right-wing issue and how it became a religious Zionist issue, because traditionally dealing with the flaws of the justice system has always been an issue of the left. But I think that anyone who knows the system in Israel understands that besides the structural problems we have in the justice system, it's also suffering from a left-wing bias, and that's why it's not only an issue of I want to be able to deal with the problems of us. It's not only an issue for law professors or lawyers. It's actually an issue. Just the past week, we saw issues of religion and state, issues of conversion in Israel, issues of immigration policies, any issue you want to address, and especially, you know what, the first chapter in my book surprised many people who read it, because the first chapter in my book, which I really hope I will be able to get it translated to English soon, but the first chapter was talking about housing prices. I didn't choose an issue that is just the regular right-wing issue. Okay, let's talk about how the big bad Supreme Court took another settlement down. I showed how the intervention of the Supreme Court in the day-to-day policy calls that the government needs to take created a huge housing problem, and created a shortage in land for development. And I think that it's the chapters that I'm most proud of, because It's actually, it exposed me as a writer to new issues that I didn't usually, I wasn't usually in the details. But I think that when you understand that without really a deep reform in the justice system and in Israeli political structure, many of the issues that we're going to talk about, and I'm not going to run away from any small issue, but many of the issues that we're going to talk about, you need to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, we have a lot of reforms to do, but we won't be able to do them if we won't be strong enough to take care of the justice system. So that's why, although it's supposed to be the least important issue, it's the most important issue. I am hoping that after the 100 days, the first 100 days of the coalition, it will be less important as it, and we will be able to have deeper conversations on policy issues and all the issues that matter the average Joe. So that's my
Thank you so much. We're definitely going to hit on some of those issues. I don't know that we're going to delve so deeply into the judicial reform, though I completely appreciate its significance in addressing some of the other points that we're going to be hitting on. So with that, let's jump right in to our first question. The COVID pandemic has created an unemployment crisis, the likes of which we've never seen before. Some career fields, for example, anything in the tourism and hospitality industries, are completely altered with no way of knowing when they'll be back at full speed. Can you tell us what the Religious Zionist Party's plan is to bring people back to work and open those industries up, and what your party's plan to combat the mass shutdown and suffering of small businesses is?
Okay, so the economical plan for the Religious Zionist Party has, I would say, three major parts. The first one is the most simple one. First, do no harm, meaning the COVID-19 pandemic cost until now was almost 100% on the private sector. Either if we're talking about workers, who some of them lost their jobs or went into avtala, chalat, or some other form of, and they got 70% of their salary if they were lucky. And especially when we're talking about the small business owners and the medium business owners, it's also affected, of course, the big business, but I believe they can take care of themselves usually. They also need but the small and medium businesses basically paid all the price. Some of it was covered with some kind of help from the government. As Reagan said, the most terrifying words in the English language is, "I am from the government and I'm here to help." So it is a little bit frightening to be dependent on the government for your day-to-day management of your own business. And I'm speaking not only as a wannabe Knesset member, but also as a small business owner. I have my own law firm. I experienced it myself, although the legal profession naturally took less of a hit, but because of the nature of the work, but definitely we see the problem, and while this happened, the public sector basically paid no price. Even people that went into vacation, they still got their salary from the government directly. They didn't have to go to get avtala from Bituach Leumi. They just get their salaries, and of course, many of them, because they're better organized or for other reasons, they took care of themselves. Now, of course, we don't want to hurt them, but first, don't hurt the small businesses, and because that's where the money comes from. So our main offer is not definitely no more new taxes or stuff like that. We need to fund the getting out of the COVID package, whatever that package will be, and we need to fund it as Israel done in the past in 2003 by a special tax on the public sector. It happened in 2003. Of course, it should be adjusted so that higher salaries pay more and lower salaries, because public sector is combined. Although the average salary in the public sector is higher than the private sector, let that think for a second, it's a problem. But we also know that some of the lowest payments are also in the public sector. We need to adjust it so the high salaries will pay more, and of course the high pensions that coming directly from the government, not pensions people saved from themselves. So that's the major. The first thing is do no harm. Try to focus. This is where to fund anything you want to do. A second thing is to try to get workers out of unemployment, and out of unemployment fees. And one of the major problems to do so is a lack of skills, because, as you said, some of the jobs just do not exist. Some people were out of the work for a year. They need to learn new skills to get into get this done. Our offer is to do it in the voucher system. When you have companies that will get their money from the government on anyone who they gave him a skill and put him into work. So they get paid based on results, not on any other method, and they get that should help try to get people back into businesses. That's from the from top to the bottom. But also one major issue that prevents small businesses from getting new workers are the laws that create a big risk for an employer to get an employee. I want, of course, just an example. In the US, it's very common to have an intern. Someone who comes, he doesn't get salary, he learns the job. If he's good, he stays. If not, then okay, no harm done. In Israel, it's illegal, because he can always tell you, oh, I need to get a minimum wage, and you fired me without hearing. And I help someone try getting into work by giving them an internship. They cost me money sometimes, because it's a bet. Sometimes they can do a good job, sometimes they can do bad job and even create damages. But they can, after 3 months of work, they can tell me, oh, we worked as an intern, but now we want us to pay 3 months salary back. And I'm also can stand criminal procedures because I didn't pay minimum wage. So that's of course a big obstacle when I'm trying to get people used to go to work, even if in the beginning they either get a low wage or no wage at all, as it's very common around the world. Another is again the cost of having new worker, the mandatory pension. So all of them can be a good idea if you're looking at them from a general point of view, but we are in a post-pandemic world. We need to adjust our system. And what does not, so maybe we need some a year, 6 months, 9 months of let the market play its role. without all those rules that were put in place when employers were big and strong companies, and workers were working for 18 hours a day in the coal mine. So we need to change this point of view, and it's a shared interest of both employers and employees to get back to business as soon as possible.
Great. I think David has a quick follow-up on that.
Sure. So in your answer, you mentioned Ronald Reagan, you mentioned taxes. Would you say that the Tzionut Datit party is more of a free market capitalist party? Or on the other hand, do you see yourself more as a big government, welfare, socialist type of a party? So which side of the spectrum do you think you're on?
First, I think it's not exactly the right kind of dichotomy that you're trying to make, because, for example, okay. We always want there is always people want to compare how is Israel compared to Sweden or Finland or Norway, not on COVID just for but as on
in general, yeah,
economy. And those countries, the free market there, they are almost 100% free market, and they are very pro-business, and the doing business is very good there. But they're also they have a lot of welfare, and so you need to have free markets regardless of what is your welfare state ideas. What do you think, the big government or small government? You need to have a free market, especially if you want a big government. Personally, I don't like big government, but it's not oh, either you're a free market guy or you're a big government. There are countries that are free market and big government, and there are countries that, so that's before I answer the question, to question the question. But we believe in free market economy, and whenever it does not serve any legitimate state interest, we don't want the state there. But you have to accept the view of the Religious Zionist Party, and I believe a lot of people in the state of Israel, that the state of Israel has different state interests than the US or other countries that some people can try to compare us to. For example, the major issues that we see, the separation of church and state, or if you want synagogue and state, I can be 100% right-wing person in Israel and think that separation of state and church is not the right solution when you want to have a Jewish state. So the lines are not exactly the party lines that one might be used to from the US or from England or from other countries, because we are a different country. We are the homeland of the Jewish people. From that, education, for example, government responsibility, not government, society and public responsibility on education, the Jewish people had a state-funded education like 2,000 years before this idea even came into being in modern countries. So you can see that, so when you talk about big government, does the society has to do anything with the education? The Jewish answer is yes. It doesn't mean anything about what do you want to do, free market or not. I hope I gave you a good enough answer.
No, that was good.
Okay, so we're going to move on then. It's no secret that we have a major housing crisis in this country right now. Young families all over the country would like to buy homes, and that dream is made impossible by astronomical prices, limited options in central locations, and bureaucratic processes that are difficult to navigate. Despite programs like Mahir Lemeshken, which have very specific requirements that many young home buyers don't meet, and more often than not don't win, there aren't very many affordable options for people to purchase homes. No less important, rent in many areas, especially more central locations, is incredibly high. What is the Religious Zionist Party's plan to solve this, and how will you implement it? And if you don't mind to pay particular attention to building up more housing in Yehuda v'Shomron.
Not to talk about Yehuda v'Shomron, or to
No, I do want you to.
Okay.
In
So
addition.
of course, let's start from the end. Of course, that would be a great solution, because Yehuda v'Shomron is very close to Jerusalem and to Tel Aviv, and there are the problems of building there are not economical or financial or ease of access. It's political, and the reason we don't have it, it's because I think it's not a good idea. I think it's giving into it's inviting and calling for international pressure on Israel, especially, and I will not take too much time on that, but especially now when the International Criminal Court tries to make my home an act of a criminal offense. The fact that I built my house in the land of my forefathers, I think it's the main call, and the best way to deal with it is to say, we're not going to let you intimidate us. We're going to build as much as we can in areas that are part of our land. And so that's and that, of course, by itself will create will help in getting affordable pricing houses. But let's talk a little bit about the public who still do not want, for some reason, to live in Judea and Samaria. First, do please, it's a good idea. But the second thing is that, as I mentioned, my book showed that one of the major reasons for the housing problem in Israel was the action of the legal advisor and the Supreme Court. In Israel, the only way to get available land for building is taking land that is currently agricultural land, owned in some, I don't want to get too much into details, but owned or relates to moshavim and kibbutzim, either in the Galil and Negev, but also in areas that are close to Tel Aviv or Yerushalayim. That's the only way. And you need, in order to do so, you need to have this that it will be worth for the moshav or the kibbutz to give the land, because he has to give on a land that he was that the kibbutz or the moshav where people were using for agriculture for sometimes for 60, 70 years, and sometimes they paid for this land a lot more than most people that live in houses in Tel Aviv paid for their own house or land, not house, but land. So it's not just to say, oh, we'll take them their land, they did their part, now they can go. It's not fair. And that's exactly what the government thought. And as long as the government was compensating them enough for the land, in between 1992 and 2002, or between 90 and 2000, Israel absorbed more than 1 million people. As a very small country, got 1 million people coming from what used to be Russia, former Soviet Union countries. And although this huge peak in demand, house pricing went down, not up, because we knew how to build, because we knew how to give out land. In 2002, the Supreme Court put a hold on this land rezoning plans by the government. And since then, until 2016, basically, we had this block. I hope now it will change because of things that have been done already, and some actions that will be done in the future. but this is the major reason for housing prices spike. Anyway, you need to have the incentive for the municipalities. It's connected also to some other questions you might want to ask me about where stands the line between municipalities and the main government. But today it's really not the main obstacle for building new developments in cities is the objection by the cities, by the municipalities, because any new citizen that moves to resident that moves to a city costs more than he pays. So the municipalities are losing money anytime they build a new neighborhood, and that's because they cannot really control their municipality taxes. So you need to have a reform in the system as a whole in order to solve this issue. And you said in the question that despite programs like Mechir Lamishtaken, the prices went up. It's not despite, it's because of programs like Mechir Lamishtaken and Ma'am Efes that the prices went up. You don't take out fire by pouring gasoline on the fire, and that's exactly what those kind of programs does. You need to give more supply. You don't need to limit the demand, and that's exactly what they did. They limited the demand, and they created higher prices. Even after all we have said, and especially when we're talking to Olim or people that comes from the US, Israel is a very small country, and and some people, a lot of I made Aliyah myself. I always say my family made Aliyah in 1910. So I am also an Oleh Hadash from the US, from Cleveland. But my wife's family came from Chicago. And I have a very good friend who came from Chicago, also made Aliyah in the past few years. And he told me, when I came to Israel, I sold my beautiful house in the suburb of Chicago. And I went and tried to build a house or to buy a house in Israel. And I looked for prices and I was amazed. Oh, the prices are so high. And then I sat for a second and I thought to myself, okay, he lives in an hour commute. He has in 1 hour of commute to downtown Chicago. Chicago is not the biggest city. Sorry for all your Chicagoans here. I also my master's is from Northwestern, so I'm allowed to go and say bad things about Chicago because I'm partly Chicagoan myself. So Chicago is not the first, not the second, even not, it's maybe the fifth today. They used to call her second city, but it's actually the fifth or the sixth city in the US when you talk about economy or you talk about size or you talk about business center or whatever. So it says, I am in an hour commute from the fifth city in the US. If I want to look for something to compare in Israel, I need to look for something that is 1 hour commute from downtown Ashkelon. So if you're looking for something that is 1 hour commute from downtown Ashkelon, you can really get a very good house in a very reasonable price. But people think that they can get, they want to compare, they have numbers in their head, and they want to compare house in downtown Yerushalayim to their house in a suburb that would take them 2 hours sometimes during traffic to go to to downtown Manhattan. So that's the compare. You need to know what to compare to. You can get reasonably priced houses in Israel if you're willing to commute 1 hour to your work. It's not, but that's and we have now, and that's another question in the future. We have now good, much better public transportation and train. If you live in Kiryat Gat or you live in Be'er Sheva, you can live in Be'er Sheva and be in 1 hour in the center of Tel Aviv, ready to go to work. And
So if we're already talking about transportation, then I would actually like to move to the next question. Because I know your party head in particular, Bezalel Smotrich, was the transportation minister for a while. And I know that he felt a particular affinity for that ministry. He said that he felt that he's done a lot of good things there. So to address cars in particular, cars are expensive, environmentally destructive, and in city centers, there's no parking. Furthermore, cities like Tel Aviv are phasing out parking spaces in favor of walkways, bike, and scooter lanes. So what are your plans to make us less reliant on cars?
so really, as you said, Bezalel Smotrich was the Minister of Transportation for a short period of time. And when I spoke with him, I still was not in politics, but I still was his friend. So I told, when he joined the Ministry of Transportation, I told him, I hope you were always my ally in issues of justice system and issues like that. Now we are dealing with buses and trains. I really hope you won't get used to it. You won't forget the fact that you won't fall in love with transportation, because I need you as a justice minister in the future. So he said, it's too late. I already fell in love with the transportation minister. It's too late. And I think it was 2 weeks in the office. So it really is a big loss for the battle for the justice system, the fact that he loves transportation now so much. But that's being said. A major, and it got some headlines, a major fight he had with the current transportation minister, Meira, about the metro system, the metro plan for Tel Aviv and the area, and greater Tel Aviv area. And she said, no, I don't want it. I want, it's a lot of money. I need to invest in train to Eilat. Now, the idea is, and the criticism that he said was that the metro is helping more people that live not in the city than people that live in the city. Because once you get into the city without a car, and you don't have a very good metro system and light rail and other methods of transportation, then you're lost, because you got to a specific point, and then what can you do? If you live in the city, you have your car, you have your parking, you can go around. So metro system is helping to build a stronger periphery. So that's why this is kind of plan that Bezalel Smotrich is for, in order to limit the need to use car in the city. Now there will never be a train from where I live to Tel Aviv. I live in Gush Etzion, in this very small place. Train is not planned to be there in the near future. So I will have to take the car from home in order to get either to the train station or to a park and ride kind of and like me are many other people. But once you have a good metro system, I can park my car in the closest metro station that will help me, and then go all day long in Tel Aviv without using my car. That's Bezalel Smotrich vision, and that's the transportation, the kind of idea that he saw. Also, another thing that he pushed forward are the fast lanes, the commute lanes. There is a term in English for that. Help me here. There is a carpool lane, and a public transportation lane that will also, if you decide already to get with a car to the city, make sure that you are using that more than one person uses the car, that you go with 2 or 3 or 4 people, and then less cars get into the city. So yes, those are the kind of solutions that Bezalel Smotrich pushed forward when he was the Minister of Transportation. That's the way we try to look at as a party, to look at those issues.
Okay, I think David has a very quick follow-up on this. Go ahead,
Sure.
David.
Sure. You mentioned the train to a lot, or the lack of train to a lot. So there's sort of this running national joke. We have a satellite in space. We crashed into the moon. Yet when it comes to a train to a lot, we just don't have one. So can you get a little more into why we don't have a train to a lot?
A train to Eilat is, I don't think anyone objects a train to Eilat. But when you build a train, you think about what are the benefits, what are the costs, and how many people will use it. I have to say that, just for example, they have a train in the US, they have a train from New York to Washington, and still most people, even if you look at prices, it's cheaper to fly from New York to Washington most of the time than to take the train. So when you have a choice, oh, I will take the train and I will be on the train for 3 or 4 hours with nowhere to stop on the way, and there is not so much traffic there. And so the benefit of using a train versus buses or cars or planes, all are, so it's not such a great benefit to use a train unless you do a very fast train that stops almost nowhere between Beersheba and Eilat. The volume of the traffic we have today not really justified it. Eilat is the major reason to do so is not for people to commute. It's more for maybe more for cars, for trains of supply to transport regular flight trains, not for passengers. But again, the need is not so big because the traffic is not so heavy.
I would like to jump in here for those who are just joining us on our live stream. We are speaking with Simcha Rothman from the Religious Zionist Party, candidate number 4 on the list. This is an event in the Poli-Talks series from Kerem House and Israeli Politics Simplified, and we are talking about some of the core issues for this election cycle and learning more about the Religious Zionist Party's platform. So moving on, we're going to head into education. We have a lot of parents that are tuning in for this event, and many of them are concerned about our current education system. Over the years, there have been many plans to change how education is approached in this country. We'd love to address a few issues in particular and hear what the Religious Zionist Party's plans are. First, the major disparity between school vacation days and workforce vacation. This in particular puts a huge strain on working parents and drives up expenses for childcare. Second is curriculum and what it is that we are teaching our children. Some feel that more curriculum decisions should be made by school principals and that the curriculum and education focus should move away from learning for tests and bagriyot and things like that, and more towards experiential learning, life skills, and general knowledge. What is your party's stance on these issues, and what is the plan to implement any changes you'd like to see made?
Okay, so I think I answered a little bit about the education before when I spoke about the importance of the responsibility for the government, for the public, for the society on education. The idea is that it's part of our heritage as a Jewish people and as a Jewish country to the education, to put the education in the top priority. One of the first, just imagine a little bit of, I always find it amazing that one of the first laws that were passed by the Knesset when Israel was in the middle of a war that threatened its own survival. And basically zero money, when you couldn't get anything in any store the law that was passed in the Knesset is Chok Chinuch Chinam, the fact that anyone can get education for free. Now, of course, there is a problem. What you get for free, sometimes it's a problem. When people don't, when there is no direct connection between what you pay and what you get, sometimes you get less, but sometimes you get more. And we need to find the right balance between those issues. The Religious Zionist Party, the first and the most detailed chapters of the platform was dealing with education. The Religious Zionist Society pays the most per capita on education for the children, the prices of education, and they pay for extra, and they get, I believe, better education. So the idea that you can't pay more to get better education for your children, it just doesn't work. If you can't do it through the system, then you do it with private lessons and you do it with other issues. So it's not the natural thing to prevent people for investing in the future of their children. It's a lot, sometimes a little bit cruel to do so. So we don't believe in it, but we do believe that the system, the governmental system, needs to be approved. You don't want to throw it away. So it's a delicate balance, and we do need and another major issue that it's Jewish education. Yes, we do need Jewish education in Israel. If someone we have groups that the education not so far away from where we sit. Anyone who, I don't know where everyone here is sitting, but there but even in Yerushalayim, but in a government funded schools, people teach the curriculum of the Palestinian Authority of how to murder us. We need some kind of supervision of what are what is the curriculum that people learn in our schools, and it's not being done today. Definitely not being done properly. We do have a program trying to give more independence to school managers, school headmasters, and I think the right. I think Jerusalem, actually, the municipality of Jerusalem, got it better than most places. And I know that there is a process of getting other municipalities to copy what happened in Jerusalem, giving the parents more freedom of choice, giving the managers of the schools more freedom with their budget and with their teachers. And I think the all in all outcome is better in Jerusalem than in other parts, and it's a reform that should advance faster. At the end game, I think, should be something. It's something that I believe we should go to, is the voucher system. I think that's a better solution. It will give more freedom of choice again for the parents, for the teachers, for the management, and it will save a lot of costs for the Minister of Education. It will take time. You can't take a system that was built. It's a transition that will take time. I think Jerusalem is a good example, and we're going there in some ways. We need to invest also with education, with better education system for the ultra-Orthodox communities, that they need. Some of them are left behind, not because they want to, because they don't want to. They don't want, or they can't join the regular schools, but they do want to get a good education for their children. They give them opportunities, to give them the ability to go and join the Israeli public and Israeli economy. So yes, I think to answer your question shortly, yes, the parents should get more choice, the schools should get more choice, and I believe this process will bring also will be able to compensate good teachers based on their effectiveness, based on their the outcome, and not because they are just too long in the system. So when, and again, it should work, but we can't throw and destroy what we have in order to get a solution. If a little bit politics, if I'm allowed a little bit politics,
Very quickly.
Just a little.
very quickly.
Very good.
Today, Naftali Bennett announced he wants a program called Restart for Education, and they're trying to make some kind of really to revolutionize the education. So I believe it can't work, and I'm finding it hard to accept this kind of program from someone who was the Minister of Education for 4 years, which exactly say for 4 years and not so long ago, 2015 to 2019. Because you can say, I wanted to restart the education, and I believe him, he might want, but once you get to a system that is has a lot of, you need to do it with, change the course of the huge boat, but not flip it over.
Okay, I would like to very quickly shift focus to higher education. If we could just very quickly address this particular question. More and more universities seem to provide less value and job assurance. As new jobs are created, more of the workforce is having a hard time. Does your party have plans to update what is taught in academia and or train and retrain the older and unskilled workforce?
Okay, here it's easier for me to say. I think that when we talk about children, we need to have some assurance that no child will be left behind, if we want to use this phrase. When we talk about higher education, here I am 100% capitalist. Okay, I really want people to pay for whatever higher education that they get, to pay the price. And I believe the forces of the market will be able to affect the curriculum of the higher education much better than any intervention from above. And what now we have is an open check of almost 10 billion shekels every year that we pay, but we have zero ability to address the problems that arise from the ways they use our funds. If we would pay the, sometimes I always find it hard to accept when I hear some professor for history or for linguistics or some other this kind of faculty saying bad mouthing the ultra-Orthodox that are getting money to learn Torah. This person never earned any money besides what he is getting from the government, high salary, to teach something for 1 or 2 students every year, because no one comes there, because it's not interesting, it doesn't give anything to anyone, and he is getting a lot of money from the government to do so, and he thinks for some strange reason that he's in higher moral ground than the person who teaches hundreds and hundreds of students, teaching them Torah. So I don't accept it. I think the system has went very far away from what it's designed to do. And if we want to help specific areas of higher education because we are benefiting from them, for example, high tech or medicine or some other, it can be done in really subsidizing, giving scholarship or subsidizing loans, but it definitely should, we should definitely not pay for academia if we can't, if we can do nothing with the outcome.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, many of our members of the audience are Olim. So we'd like to address a couple of issues that are pretty particularly relevant to them as well. Many of us still have family living all over the world. We have seen a growing divide between, you too. We have seen a growing divide between Israeli and diaspora Jews. Many in the diaspora feel disconnected to the country. They feel that Israel should be a homeland to all Jews, therefore their values should be reflected in the way that matters concerning all Jews are handled. Can you share your thoughts on this issue and whether you think we are doing enough to address it? And in addition, many diaspora Jews are experiencing a rise in anti-Semitism and are looking to Israel to guide and help them. What is your party's plan to combat these issues?
Okay, so the first issue is very sensitive, very delicate, understandable. It's understandable because in Israel, it's a democratic country, and Reform and conservative Jews, or I can't even say a minority. To say minority will be to exaggerate, and therefore, of course, when you talk about Judaism in Israel, you're talking about Judaism in the Orthodox way. Even the secular Jews in Israel, when they talk about Judaism, they talk about Judaism in the Orthodox way. So it's really hard to try to accommodate in the and it's not in fact it's not really fair. So when I'm talking, just take the Kotel for example. There is a part of the Kotel that is designated for people who want to be there together, families, without separation of men and women. There is a part. It's a small one. It's smaller than the regular part. It's not the main area, but because it's due to a very reasonable reason. To the regular Orthodox Kotel, millions of people come every year. To the smaller part that is designated for the Reform or conservative or for anyone else, much less people come, and even there, most of the people that come there are Orthodox people that after they do a regular event in the Orthodox way, in the regular Kotel, they come there and so they can sit together. But even so to say, oh, it's not an equal treatment, no, it's not, because the numbers talk, sorry. I really am, I have to say, and that might not be so popular with some other people, but I really hope that Israel will face a very big wave of aliyah from Jews of all kinds, and then we will have to address the issue, what do we do? Because we have 10% of the Jews in Israel are identifying themselves as Reform, because a lot of Reform Jews come to Israel and make aliyah. And then we will deal with the issue differently. It's not the case, so that's one thing. Of course, the connection between the Jews in Israel and Jews in diaspora, they are our brothers. We love them, although we don't agree with them. It's okay. We don't agree also. As you can see, we have a multi-party system. We don't agree a lot. We are Jews. It's part of what we do. That's the way we roll. But of course, we want connection with them. We want them when they do come, as tourists or as olim, to feel at home. But keep in mind the first part of what I said, and that's kind of when I came to the US to do my master's degree, to live in Chicago. So I went into to a synagogue, to an Orthodox shul, which in Israel I would never go into. It was way more modern than I would ever expected in Israel. But of course, I didn't come there and say, okay, now I will move the table, I build a bigger mechitza because I don't want to see women, because I'm coming to a place, the community there is different, and I have to respect that. And we also have to respect the fact that Israel is different from the US or England or some other people. But I think a lot of the issues, there are some people that benefit from creating fights. There are some people, if they get something without fights, they feel they didn't get anything. And that's a problem. And the issue of the conversion in Israel, in the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court ruled now, is a
We're
great.
actually going to get to that a little later on. So let's save
it's
it.
a great example. Great example of how to create problems where they don't really exist just for the sake of the fight. So that's about the connection with the diaspora Jews. We need but do see, please, I beg anyone here listens who has, again, I have a lot of family in the US, some of them reform, some of them conservative. I know the issue. But I do know that we usually don't think about the benefits of the system in Israel. We used to think about, oh, the rabbinate, oh, he's so corrupt, it's problematic. We don't really appreciate. I have a cousin who joined the Marines. Just imagine the fact that it's now he has his own food because he keeps kosher. Excellent. He cannot eat with his friends. Just imagine how it would be if we don't have a singular kosher institute in Israel. How it would be to go to the army in Israel. How do you create a cheder ochel? How do you eat together when everyone eats from his own bag? It's not really it's not really an army. It's not really you can't really fight people. It's that used to the road sign used to say families who pray together stay together, right? Soldiers who don't eat together don't fight together. And definitely when you talk about an army, so it's a benefit that we don't think of. It's a benefit. In Israel, there is a lot of intermarriage, not intermarriage between Goyim and Jews, intermarriage between two separate edot, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. But in the US, it's very hard because no one trusts anyone. And so when I want to feel what it's 100% Sephardi community or 100% Ashkenazi community, I go to the US. My community is almost 50-50, and you can find a lot of couples that the husband is Sephardi and the wife is Ashkenazi, or other way around, because we do trust each other and we don't keep score, because we have a central place that keeps marriage and Judaism status by the government. So people think, oh, it's a coercion. Yes, maybe. I don't think it's a coercion, but doesn't matter. We have a lot to benefit from it. And people just usually, when they fight, don't really think about the benefits. About anti-Semitism, okay.
Just very in one sentence, because we have to.
I'm against anti-Semitism.
Oh, that's good.
we should fight it in any way we can, and one of the major thing is people should understand that there is no separation between the BDS and the anti-Israel movement and anti-Semitism. If you're against Israel, you're anti-Semite. Sorry, and I know some people would say it's something that some people would not like to hear. But yes, if you do double standard for the state of Israel, one of the ways to be anti-Semite is to do double standards against Jews. If you do double standards against the state of the Jewish homeland, check your anti-Semitism.
Okay, so I want to move on, but we did bring up Aliyah. So just very quickly, as many of us here know, the process of making Aliyah and integrating afterward is not a simple matter, as much as we'd like people to come here. Many times people make Aliyah and struggle to find work, adapt to the language, and ultimately they return to their country of origin because they felt that they couldn't make it work. This seems to fly in the face of the Zionist vision and values. What will your party do to both encourage and facilitate Aliyah and assist those who come when they get here with things like employment and housing? And I am sorry, but we are running very low on time. So if we could
Okay, I'll try to be short. First, we need to prevent the state of Israel has a very generous sal klita. We do give a lot to our olim because we appreciate our olim. The best way to improve it is to make sure it's not being used for people that we don't want as an olim, or they don't really want to come and join the Jewish state. Most of the people that came to Israel through Chok HaShvut in the past year were non-Jews. I'm not talking about not halachically Jews. I'm talking about they don't identify themselves as Jews. They're getting into through the grandson clause in the law of return. And I think we are the only parties that says cancel this clause. It has nothing to do with Israel as the homeland of the Jewish people. The historical reasons for it, it's a big historical debate. Let's not get into it. Now it doesn't serve the purpose of being an aliyah. And of course, once you have less olim, but really more real olim, you can invest more in the olim. It will also shift the focus of where to invest in aliyah, because right now, most of the people that are coming as olim, but not really Jews, are from the former Soviet Union countries and Eastern Europe. And once you take this out of the equation, we will have more olim coming from the percentage of the olim will be more from the US, France, UK, other English-speaking countries and Western countries, because the Jews are there. And that will also shift the focus of the Ministry of Absorption, Ministry of Aliyah and Absorption. So that will be able to employ people that will make it available to English speakers. Now it's mostly Russian. And so we need to work on that. And also personally, because of my personal background, I would really want to be Israel does not have constituencies like the US or other countries, but I would really like to be the congressman for English speakers in the Knesset, because I think this public, personally, I know myself, is falling between no one even knows that they should care of this a group of people. If you can start with taxes, I file taxes on both sides of the ocean because my wife is American citizen, my children are American citizens, so I do file both tax returns, and I know what kind of problems does it take, and what it's prevent olim from opening small businesses because of the social security issues. So I know the issues, and I hope I will be able to work as a Knesset member to solve them. But I think the major issue is to getting people to be to connect people to the information that they need, because many things have solutions, but we don't even know how to reach them. And Nefesh B'Nefesh does, of course, a tremendous job in that, but we need more, and we need it not only from NGOs, but also from the government.
Okay, so moving forward, we'd like to address the municipality question that you mentioned earlier. Since the start of the pandemic, a lot of attention has been given to the municipalities and whether they should be given more power to make decisions regarding lockdowns and regulations for their own citizens. Many of the country's mayors have called for handing the reins over to them, expressing their greater understanding of the needs and capabilities of their own neighborhoods and citizens. What are your feelings on this matter? Would your party support a move in this direction? And what would you do to implement that?
Okay, so about the COVID, I really hope it will be less relevant when I will be in the Knesset Be'ezrat Hashem, because of the vaccines and other. It will definitely remain an issue on other issues. I believe more power needs to come to the municipalities. I believe, I mentioned it before, I think municipalities need to have the freedom to change the taxes, the municipality taxes, to make it more reasonable. I think the fact that we tax houses based on square meters and not based on value, like the US does most places, is not really, does not really make any sense, and it's not really helping anyone. And so I would like to see more freedom for municipalities to zone their places, and to get taxes and municipality taxes in place. I believe the problem with giving power to municipalities in Israel is that not all municipalities are created equal. Some municipalities can do it. Some municipalities really rely heavily on the main government for funding. And once you bring the funding, you also make the decisions, which is usually the problem. One of the major issues is education, but it can be solved once you are allowing them to change the way they charge taxes. I believe everything in the power of municipalities can be really solved when they will be really independent, will be allowed to stand on their own financial legs, and then they will be able to do and make decisions. It needs a big reform in that, and the government will have to do something that the government does not really want to do, is to give away power.
Okay. So one thing that has made huge headlines over the last couple of weeks, for sure, has been the environment. Now we're not going to focus on the tar on the beaches, but if that's already becoming more prominent in people's minds, we do feel that it's a really ripe time to address some environment questions. Israel has a pollution problem, from Haifa's air quality to trails and campsites turning into litter pits to our huge consumption of plastics and disposables. Israel is not an example of startup nation when it comes to environmental policy. So we'd like to know from you, what are your plans for the environment, and are there any educational and cultural changes you would support to address the need for environmental change?
I would say that environment is a big umbrella term. When people talk about environment, mixed issues that shouldn't be mixed. Keeping the environment from pollution, keeping landmarks from being destroyed. It's also an issue that was brought into the news recently when the Palestinian Authority destroyed a 3,000 years old archaeological site in Arival. So so there are many issues that you can put under environment: archaeology, pollution, plastic use, which is a different issue. And of course, global warming, and everything goes under environment. So I don't think it's a good idea. I think that taking care of the environment, making the development in Israel in a way that it won't hurt. Israel is really going forward in many, many aspects of dealing with the environment. I think no one can compare the situation that used to be in Israel than the situation now. We all remember what happened to the Yarkon and what happened to a person who fell into the Yarkon a few 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and today the parts of the Yarkon you can actually drink from. Don't try it, please don't try. But you really they got much better, and also other places around Israel. Israel does invest, and Israel is a leading force in using alternative energy, of course, and also recycling water. So it's not. I don't like the to say, oh, Israel is so terrible about environment. We're using we drink water. We are saving water from going away because we do most of our drinking water now come from plants and not from the Kinneret or from rivers or from other places. So we are very advanced, and we are a startup nation on many issues that goes under the environment. The fight about global warming, I don't want to really get into it, but we have to take into account, even if all of the state of Israel will have zero CO2
Emissions.
yeah. So even if all the effect on global warming and the effect on the total numbers for the world will be insignificant. So let's not think that we are the center of the world for many other reasons, but not on that issue. So yes, I think it needs to be taken care of. I think we need to take it into account when we develop. We need to take into account when we build, and when we do roads, and when we do any. And there is a very strong, also in the Torah, the importance of keeping it. But the main focus of keeping the environment is keeping the environment so people can live in the environment. The main focus that we as a Religious Zionist Party think is keep the environment for the people. Don't minimize the importance of the people in order to keep some kind of save the people before you save the whales. Not we don't care about the whales, but save the whales for the people, not the other way around. So that's our general.
Okay. Before we move on to my final question and then hand things over to David, I do want to let people know who have only recently joined us. We are speaking with Simcha Rothman from the Religious Zionist Party. This is the Poli-Talks series hosted by Kerem House and Israeli Politics Simplified, where we discuss some of the core issues of this election cycle with candidates from different parties. Now, I know this is a question that I am sure that you have quite a lot to say on, and we did reference it a little bit already, but I do know that David has a few questions of his own that he'd like to get into, and we are running out of time. So as much as possible, I would like to try and answer this question as succinctly as possible. The recent decision to apply law of return and citizenship rules to reform and conservative converts has been met with fierce adversity from many in the Haredi and religious camps, while being celebrated by many others in the modern secular world. Where do you and your party stand on this issue, and what would you propose to address citizenship issues with those who don't come from traditional Orthodox backgrounds?
Okay, so I will try to be very fast on that. First, the ruling did not do anything to people who are converting to Judaism in a Reform community abroad. That's an old ruling. Put that aside. It doesn't matter. A person who converts to Reform Judaism and after a few years wants to make Aliyah, he is eligible for law of return for many years now. It doesn't have anything to do with the new ruling. The only thing this ruling did is for people that are already in Israel, then they want to convert. And the question is, why would they want to convert? If they want to convert because they want to join Judaism and have zero benefits out of it, they are welcome. No one cares. Of course, we would be happy for them to see the light of Judaism, but no one from the government will say them no or yes. what happens now is, and I think that the better way to look at it is that one of the judges who supported the ruling said it poses a grave danger to the state of Israel. So the grave danger is that many people that live in Israel and they are not citizens, and they have a long line to get citizenship. Either they are foreign workers coming from the Philippines, or they're illegal infiltrators that came from the Europe or from Africa. Doesn't really they're in Israel and they want to get Israeli citizenship. And now the court basically told them, instead of waiting 5, 6, 7 years to get your Israeli citizen, just go take a Zoom course. You can make, sorry if anyone is getting insulted, but it's true. You can get a Reform Judaism conversion course and get your certificate of becoming Reformed Jew over Zoom, 12, 20 hours. So that's the easy pass for anyone who stood for too long in the lines in the Ministry of Interior in Israel. And that basically say Israel has lost control of its immigration policy. Any Reform rabbi, which is also not something very hard to get, sorry, but that's true, because there is no centralized entity that controls what a Reform rabbi can or cannot do, can decide to give citizenship on its own, and people don't need, if they're men, they don't need to be circumcised. If they don't need to observe anything, they don't really have to do anything just to become and get citizenship in Israel. It's not a good idea. And even the judges who supported this ruling say it's not a good idea. So, and that ruling needs to be changed by the legislator. We're committed to change it. Of course, we support, unlike, and there was a big debate on that, unlike the ultra-Orthodox parties who think that what's going on in the army, who has a very good system, of course, has some flaws, but good system of conversions. Unlike other people that say only a very strict way of conversion, we're not there. But you need to have an halachically accepted way of conversion in Israel. Because the majority of the Jews in Israel are Orthodox, and that's what they are recognizing as conversion. And B, because that's the only way not to make it the easy pass. We want people to join Judaism, does not matter which kind of Judaism, because they really want to join the Jewish people, not because they have had enough from the lines in the Ministry of Interior.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to hand the reins over to David to wrap us up. David, take it away.
Sure. So I'm going to ask you some strategic election type questions. The first one is, back in 2018, Naftali Bennett left the Bayit Yehudi party to start his own party, Hayamin HaChadash. At the time, I recall Bezalel Smotrich being very upset because he said he was dividing the camp shortly before elections. Isn't this Bezalel Smotrich sort of doing the same thing, where he's now leaving Yamina shortly before the elections?
First, definitely not, because Bezalel Smotrich did not leave any party. Yamina was a combination of few parties that ran together and have a decision if to run again. What Naftali Bennett did is leave his own party and form a new party, leaving the parties that he managed in a questionable way behind. So first, there is a difference in Israel, and some people might find it hard to understand if they're not used to the system in Israel. There are parties and there are lists. You can run as a list to the Knesset combined with few parties. We saw it with Blue and White. Blue and White was combined out of 3 parties. Avodah, Gesher, Meretz ran together as one list with 3 parties. So first, it's not a division of party. B, that's a technical question. The ideological reason is much simpler. Naftali Bennett was asked if he will commit to join only right-wing government, or will he choose his own agenda of becoming prime minister and will form a government with left-wing parties, meaning the ideology will be set aside, as Naftali Bennett said. And Bezalel Smotrich said, I cannot be in a party that puts the ideology to the side. I accept this view. That's why I joined this party after this breakup happened. But because I do believe you cannot leave ideology aside. So Naftali Bennett says, if it's not Corona, if it's not COVID, I don't care about it. But now see the issues that we just spoke about the conversion in Israel, the Supreme Court does not say, oh, it's Corona time now, I'm not dealing with issues. Issues will arise. And if you have a government with Mifleget Avoda, who number 4 in Mifleget Avoda, he is the one who appealed to the Supreme Court.
Karev, yeah.
And he created this problem. So how can you solve the problem if Naftali Bennett is from the Tzionut Datit and he says, I want to form a government with him and I will solve the conversion issue? How would you get to an agreement within your government?
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying, okay, so really Yamina was several lists that sort of joined together, or several parties that joined under one list. So is that essentially what you're doing now with Noam and Otzma Yehudit, where you're saying we're basically separate parties and under one list?
Definitely, exactly, very, very precise observation. But even more than that, because Naftali Bennett and Bezalel Smotrich kept for themselves the option to operate together after the election, and before in the past election, and they did operate together after the election. Here, it's really 100% technical block, and after the election, Otzma Yehudit will operate as its own party and its own fraction in the Knesset without any connection to the Tzionut Datit, the election.
So how would you respond then to people who say, well, I might like your side of the party or your side of the list, let's say, to be more technically correct. I think Bezalel Smotrich was a good transportation minister. However, the party's name is Tzionut Datit. What if I'm not a religious Zionist? And it's merged with Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's a Kahanist. How would you address people who say, I'm not that extreme, or I am not Dati Leumi, why should I vote for this party?
So I suggest that people will vote to parties based on the platform, and the agenda. What do we offer? We offer a plan to reform the justice system, to reform, as we said, the immigration laws, to reform the education system. We have plans. You like our plans, vote for us. And a lot of people that are not religious Zionists vote for us. We have ultra-Orthodox, we have secular, we have Masorti, we have all kinds, because we are really about values and the path and the change that we want to push forward. So that's and now if you're not, you don't have to, and I don't even agree 100% with anyone who's on the list, and even not 100% with anyone who is on the party. But there is, and we do share the major issue. The major issue is we are committed to right-wing government and to a government that is obligated to be with the Tzionut Datit values of land, Torah, and Eretz Yisrael, Torah Yisrael, Am Yisrael, that we are committed to. And people that are, I would really suggest to people that are, for some reason, don't like a person in a list, any list, but definitely Tzionut Datit list. Just think for yourself if you are 100% happy with what everyone on another party that you're going to vote for, what they're going to say. Is it really a problem or is it an excuse? Because sometimes people tell me, oh, I don't like he speaks too loud. Okay, because people in Abir Kara, we saw how from Yamina, we saw how he spoke. He's not very gentle when he's speaking. So really ask yourself, what are you voting for? What are you voting against? And what are the values you want your party to push forward? And once you do that, if you decide that our values is the values that you want to push forward, vote for us. If not, find someone better. But really, we never built our party like you built a boys band. Oh, we need someone who is blonde, someone with black hair. We built it based on people who share ideology, who share values, and want to push them forward.
So I want to ask you somewhat of a personal question about your background. I saw you start a movement. I believe it translates to English as the Movement for Governability and Accountability.
And democracy.
And what?
Governability and democracy.
And democracy, sorry. Can you tell us about this movement and how you founded it? What was the purpose of this movement?
So I think it was a little bit, I spoke about it in the introduction, but I can repeat a little bit. The justice system in Israel has a lot of problems that we addressed. Israel really does not have checks and balances. No one checks the courts. The court is self-appointed, self-perpetuating court, deals with any issue without, you go directly to the Supreme Court on any issues that you want, and you don't need standing. The court cancels laws without a constitution or even without any basis in the basic laws. A lot of problems in the justice system, in the connection between elected and unelected officials in Israel. And we investigate those issues. We investigated in Meshilut, the Movement for Governability and Democracy, investigated those issues. We showed the public and the public elected officials what are the problems, what are the solutions we offer. And in many senses, the agenda of the Religious Zionist Party on how to reform the justice system is based on 8 years' work that I have done in an NGO designed for that matter.
So let's say in the best case scenario for Tzionut Datit, you guys get in, you get enough seats that you get the Justice Ministry. Bezalel Smotrich is both Transportation and Justice Ministry so that everybody's happy. So the best case scenario for your party. What would be, let's say, if you had to make one change, what would be the one change you would make to the Supreme Court?
The first change that you can't do anything else before is the override mechanisms that allow the Knesset to have the final word on legislation. Because today we have a court that cancels Knesset legislation we don't have a constitution, but the court says, oh, we are canceling this law because it's unconstitutional. When I introduced myself in the US, I said, I'm a constitutional lawyer in a country without a constitution. It's really hard to, and that's why the court canceled 4 times in a row laws regarding illegal infiltrators, although they have no basis in basic laws and of course no constitution to begin with. So once you make an override mechanism, making it hard for the court to cancel Knesset laws and making the Knesset has the final word on legislation, then you can go and push forward other changes. The most important change, not the first one, but the most important is to change the way you appoint judges. Because in Israel, as I said, we have a self-appointed judiciary. You can't appoint judges to the Supreme Court without the current justices agreeing who will join their forces. That's why we have a self-perpetuating judge with ever-growing distance between where the judges are and the public is, and it's creating a lot of problems we see in many issues.
So when I was doing research on you, I think you referred to this process as like a family business, that, you know, the court sort of appoints itself and keeps the business in the family, to translate it into English because it was a Hebrew interview. My last question is actually sort of on the last question that you answered. So you mentioned that the court sort of bases things on unclear principles. Often they'll quote the Chok HaYisod Kavod Adam V'Cheruto, which is the sort of basic law that talks about the individual liberties of the people of Israel. However, you actually were on the news, I believe it was on the Arutz Esrim not long ago, discussing this within the context of flying in and out of Israel. So when I looked up the law, the 6th clause in that law specifically says that every Israeli is free to enter and exit the country. Now, I think up until Corona, this was probably the most boring law. Like nobody would have thought about this law for more than a second. But all of a sudden, the government comes along and says, we're going to close down the airports. And I don't want to say 100% of the people can't enter or exit, but the vast majority of Israelis cannot fly. You can't come in or out of the main port of entry into the country. So can you explain what you were doing with fighting for this cause? What exactly was the problem here and what you were trying to solve?
So yeah, you have to, the idea is, and that's a funny thing with constitutional rights. The US has a constitution saying Congress shall make no law that limits, that hurts the right to have property, right? You have your right for your own property. But you have a federal tax code. So the Congress apparently made a law that will take money from you to the government. So the fact that you have a right in the Constitution does not mean the government will not take it when needed for some reasons. So that's exactly the problem with the vagueness of constitutional rights. Yeah, you have a right to leave Israel or to get into Israel, but when you have a state interest, compelling state interest of not spreading a disease, you can limit the rights. You can limit other rights also. So that's always the delicate balance. And that's the role of the legislator to find out the right solution. There is, I know sometimes in the US people think, oh, it's the reason for the court because it's in the Constitution. But actually, most of the time, when the court deals with it, he lives for the Congress to decide what is the compelling state interest and what are the methods to deal with it. So that's exactly the job of the legislator. It creates tension between justices in the US and the public, but the tension is not so bad because you have a way to change the appointment of judges. You have a way to even change the Constitution. But when you have an unwritten Constitution, you can't really change because it actually exists only in whatever the judges think. So, for example, even though we have this right, no judge thought that he needs to limit the government ability to prevent people from coming to Israel because, as you said, it's not in the values of the judges to do it. So that's exactly what I want to change. I want to change and make it very clear that those kind of decisions, it's for up to the public debate, exactly to decide the limit and the scope of each right and what is more important in a certain time, and not to allow unelected and unaccountable judges to make exactly these policy calls.
Thank you.
David, thank you so much for asking some really tough, hard-hitting questions and getting to more of the political side of some of this elections issues. Simcha, before we wrap up, would you like to end with a couple of final summarizing words?
So vote right, of course. And because I don't know if you got it, that I am a free market guy. Maybe
I got it. We're good.
We figured it out.
We figured it out.
So I really hoped I would say, okay, vote right, and we have competition, because I think that the market serves better when you have competition. But sadly, we're the only right-wing party running for the Knesset who has a very clear view what is right and committed to right-wing government and right-wing ideas. There are other good people to vote for, but there is only one right-wing party. And so I urge anyone who wants this to happen to vote right. And I urge anyone who is even if for some strange reason you don't want to vote for me, still, I hope I will be able to help you in the Knesset in any manner that we spoke about this past hour and a half, especially in issues that no one else will, because yes, you need, as a free market guy, I know that you need to invest your time in the thing that you do better than other people, because that's the best way to serve the purpose of your work as a Knesset member or as an elected official. So I hope I will be able to do so. And thank you for the time and for listening. Thank you for having me, Meira and David. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I know the campaign keeps you busy, so we're very appreciative and glad that you were able to take the time and speak to our audience and anybody else who joined along for the ride. And David, as usual, thank you for joining me in hosting. So thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to follow the Kerem House and Israeli Politics Simplified on Facebook to hear more about upcoming events in the Poli-Talks series. We've already got a couple of events planned, and I'm sure that we're going to have some more. So stay tuned, follow those pages, and be sure to let us know what you think. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.